I'm Chase.
And I'm Timothy.
And this is Customer Service.
Morning, pal.
How we doing, big dog?
Doing just fine. We've wrapped up a little run of podcasts.
I know.
Yeah. I feel like this happens. We get
get severely behind, and then we
a lot of catch up. And
yeah.
But this one was great. So this is a situation where I don't even remember the series of events that happened where this book got in front of me as like, oh, would you want to carry it? Yeah. I took one look and was like, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we get into all of it, but just looking at like the cover, the layout, what it was about, I was like, this is an instant. This is perfect. I think that our customers are going to really resonate with this. I really resonated with it. Yep. And it was it was immediately exciting just to get the book in. Yeah, and then we had reached out because I was talking with her regarding, some purchasing, boring business stuff. And then I was like, hey, would you ever do the podcast? It could be really fun. She agreed, and luckily it all worked out after a little back and forth. So we were excited to do this because we love chatting food. She has a crazy interesting past.
Yep, it's worth noting she was nice enough to get up early in Tokyo to do it with us towards the end of our day.
Yeah.
Really sick, dude. Like I said, when I walked into the pod and I was like, man, dude, like the recipes are like, it's all so approachable. It feels like with any food outside of what I'm familiar with, which is a couple things, it always feels like, well, I don't know. I don't know the terms. I don't know. I wouldn't even know where to begin. You know what I mean?
Which makes the home cooking part. You can go home and you can go grab ingredients from a place and do a recipe, and that's fine. But this is a book that more encourages, I think, you to begin to like have the things and do the things so it's a regular part of your quick routine, as opposed to just like, here's some random one-off recipes that you can go get unusual ingredients and make. This is more like, let me set you up so that you can kind of change the way you're cooking and the way you're approaching like daily recipes. So it's like a more long-term thing. I think it's a really cool way of like approaching a cookbook and like an approach to like future cooking.
Yeah, because I mean, she mentioned, and obviously you should get the book. Absolutely, there's how to make the perfect amount of white rice, and also side dishes that you eat on primarily while you're drinking a glass of beer or a glass of wine, and then how to establish certain soup stocks or and the ingredients to have on hand to do it quickly, like a simple udon. You know what I mean? Like, I'm super stoked. Went home, read through it completely. Can't wait.
There's two things that I think can happen with like cooking and learning to cook, which is like there's this intimidation factor about the unknown because you don't know what you're doing, and there's a lot of things you need and you don't know where to begin, and then you don't want to start and be a novice, but that's just the way it goes. Yeah. But to be honest with you, everyone who's like Italian food is the thing I feel most comfortable with, because it's what I grew up watching my mom and my grandma cook, and what I've learned to cook first. Above everything else, we learned that food first. And now you realize that as deep as you get into it, then you start going, how do I make like the simplest stuff the best it could be? You know what I mean? Yeah. So you go back to that anyway. This sort of puts you in both places. You know what I'm saying? Where you're beginning, you're in the new stages. It's going to show you how to do things easily and make them part of a normal routine, but also the subtlety on how to do them, at least in her mind, perfectly. You know what I mean? And someone who's grown up with that food and is telling you, here's how you skip the not knowing if you're doing the right thing. This is the right stuff to buy. These are like the little quick techniques to make this most simple like stuff better, is going to make sure that everything else you learn from here out, whether it's Japanese food or any other type of food for that matter, teaches you how to do the simplest stuff the best. That's the best way. I think that's like the number one thing you can do. Yeah. So obviously we were incredibly excited to do this interview because we really care about this stuff, and she does too. So let's not wait anymore. The book is Mother Tongue. Her name is Akiko Kurematsu. Yep. She's also incredibly well spoken, so she's fun to listen to. Yeah. This is a really fun one. We love doing it. Hope she did too, and I think everyone else will be really into it. So
we've got it on the site right now at time of recording this. Already talked about getting a couple more units in. So
they're going
pop
quick.
On over, snatch it up. It's beautiful. Yeah. We talk about inspiration for the cover, the artwork, the photography. Everything is sick.
It feels so intentional. Even if you're not into cooking, this is still be an interesting book to read through. So, let's get right into it.
Yep.
So, are you normally an early person or no?
No, I'm not. And having a child and not being an early person doesn't go.
Nightmare.
It's
Nightmare.
nightmarish. I,
How old do you have?
he is 3, and
Okay.
while we're in Japan, he's enrolled in a Japanese kindergarten.
Awesome.
Cool.
So he gets it's a full kind of immersion where it's obviously full Japanese language, but I chose a kindergarten that has kind of the traditional rituals, even those that are a little bit more Shinto, or Buddhist, where they use small beads during their morning
Oh.
meetings, or they have a little zabuton, like a little cushion where they can sit, and they learn how to fold their legs when they sit down on the floor, or they learn how to put their hands together in prayer. So little things like that are really part of the culture, but starting to go away a little bit. I wanted a school that still had those kind of leanings, so that he it's not like my family is extremely Buddhist or Shinto. It's just that I think it is an important part of our kind of philosophy and our history. So
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
so he's in a kindi where there's a lot of kind of traditional values.
Cool. You know, it's funny. We're both from, I don't know if you, we're from like the Midwest. So like the
Yeah,
schools like we went to were like, it's different. You know what I mean? Like there's not, it's more like, it's very like, I guess there's like Christian schools and some of that definitely leans one way. And, you know, there's certain values
yeah,
and morals that attributed to those things. But it's like, it was more just like school. It was like daycare until it became school. And then they treat you
yeah,
like it's school. And then
Yeah.
there's no, and like the only like learning you really do besides like regular, I don't know how else to call it, would be gym, maybe. You know,
right,
like
Yeah.
it's like there's
right.
nothing art, but it was always just
And,
taught. It was never like a serious thing. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
I
And
I totally understand. I went to an elementary school in Ohio, and it was,
Oh,
yeah.
Akiko, you're
So
talking to the right people. Then we
wait,
didn't know
where
you
no,
were from
yeah,
Ohio.
where
it
about in
was
Ohio?
in Greenville, Ohio, which is, I mean, when we first immigrated, it was the first place that my family immigrated to outside of Japan,
Wow.
and we left in 1986. And I don't know what my mom was thinking, but she had on like a full, like courage, like some sort of setup piece with like a Louis Vuitton bag. And my dad was in a suit and tie. And we had to get dressed up and go to the airport and get on this flight. And it went into Chicago. And then from Chicago, it went into Dayton, Ohio.
Hmm.
Oh
And from
yeah,
Dayton, Ohio, it was
starting
an
off
hour.
strong.
It was an hour into like cornfields and soybean farms
Yeah.
to Greenville, Ohio. And it
Yeah,
was,
in
I
Louis
mean,
Vuitton.
yeah, totally.
So she
Hey,
was
I
the one
love
that
it.
had she had the single bag in Ohio
Yeah,
in the
she
80s.
she was, I mean, my parents had no idea where Greenville, Ohio was. And
Why
then
did they choose it?
because we moved because of my father's job.
Oh, okay.
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 Yeah, so he works in the automotives industry. So we
Oh,
ended up
okay.
That's what we have
always
there.
moving kind of around the Rust Belt. So we lived in Ontario, we lived in in Ohio. So it was Honda. My father worked for a subsidiary of Honda, but in the 80s
Mm.
and 90s, they were growing their business in North America very rapidly. And my father was kind of the young, the young engineer, who was told to go over there to oversee quality control of the parts that were being manufactured
Yeah,
in Ohio.
goodness. I mean, so I'm from Cleveland, right on the lake.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So when you
And
said
I'm from
Ohio, I was like,
I'm
oh, okay,
northeast
here we go.
Yeah,
Indiana.
you
So
totally understand that. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I've always been so curious too, like how somebody moving to America picks a city. So it obviously makes sense job wise, and there is a ton of automotive manufacturing between like
yes,
Detroit, and I know a lot of central Ohio, kind of all the way through to Pittsburgh, has a lot of like the Chevy plants and stuff like that
that's
as
right.
well. So it's really
That's right.
interesting, huh?
yeah, it's kind
Yeah.
of where my dad worked, like all because I'm from Northeast Indiana. And it's like pretty much right. I mean, you can accidentally drive into Ohio from
Yeah.
where we're at,
Yeah.
Oh,
and
I
like,
went to a Japanese school every Saturday in Indianapolis.
oh, okay,
Wait, how
cool.
cool.
Yeah.
Wow, you really this is the right podcast for you. Very specific. Very nice. Yeah. So I mean, it's like, it's an interesting thing. Like being from those places, I never even thought, I didn't know anybody who'd ever been to Japan, from Japan. We don't have like a lot of diversity in those locations. And I mean, I'm sure as well to a certain degree that like it's hard to like be interested in that kind of thing and like be able to find it because there's just not much. I always knew like a lot of the clothes like came from Europe, but I didn't have any like connection to any of those locations. My family were like Italian immigrants, but like they're from like farmlands. It wasn't like they didn't come from Milan. Yeah. So it's like I didn't have any like connection to those overseas places. So was it fascinating coming here to a degree when you were young, or no? Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're fascinated. Like, you could drop us off in any part of Japan and we think it was amazing because we don't know
about anywhere.
You know what I mean? But because it's different to us, But did it feel the same way coming here? Or did it feel different?
I was so young when we immigrated, when we moved to America. I was only 6 and I had just finished kindergarten here and was starting elementary school in Ohio. And I don't even remember. People ask me, do you remember the language barrier or the cultural barrier in moving to a totally different country and a different set of values and completely different way of doing things? And I don't remember any discomfort at all.
Yeah.
I just wanted to play. I just wanted to have some friends. You make do with a few words that you know, and then suddenly, when you're 6, your vocabulary just explodes at school, and
so wild. It's so my daughter's best friend is from Japan, and when she first, and they're when they would have met, they would have been 3, and I think they'll both. I mean, I know my daughter will be 5 this year. I think she'll be 5 as well. And what's crazy is in those 2 years when she didn't speak at all, and look, when you're 3, it doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? Because they don't really do a lot of talking anyway. They just they know what to do. They just want to play. And from now until 5, she's just perfect. Like, I mean, it's like near perfect. It's insane. And it's like 2 years.
And you said she was telling you how to say.
She knew how to switch between. Yeah. She was telling me like how to spell my name and use it's crazy. It's like, it's so quick when you're that age, I think.
Totally. And I think that's why I wanted to come back to Japan for a length of time while my son is still young and has the flexibility so that, 3, 4, 5 years old, that's the time where your brain can just totally soak up any word. It doesn't even, I don't think he has an idea really what is really Japanese and what is really American or Western. He just uses the words that helps him communicate with those around him.
That's so cool. So like, give me this. So I know then if he's 3, I know approximately when you had the kid. These were trying times around, post COVID and stuff. What were some of like, how was the sleeping? How was the eating? Like, what was tough about it? Like, everyone has like different things, or was it all smooth sailing?
Well, I had a pretty rough time conceiving, so I ended up doing 4 rounds of IVF to even get to conceiving Mako. And so I remember it pretty well. It was one of the most trying times of my life. And
wow.
And if you are anyone who has gone through the process of infertility treatments, it can be absolutely soul destroying. You can go through fertility treatments without ever getting a result. So it can be, it's a very, very difficult, challenging process for a woman to go through and a couple to go through. But luckily, I've conceived with Mako. He was born during COVID, and I remember it pretty well. We had, and I'm living in New Zealand currently. I'm on my 7th year living there with my Kiwi husband. But in New Zealand, the borders were closed for a very long time. And I didn't see my family. I didn't get to come back to Japan, or my family didn't come to visit me when I was pregnant. So it was, and even the birth and the first year of having my child, I didn't have any interaction with my family physically. So it was all over video. That
Right.
was really difficult for me, just to not have someone to celebrate with. And after an incredibly trying time to celebrate the birth of my
Yeah.
son, and you want family to I don't know, you just want them to hype you up a little bit. You just
100%.
want
Yeah.
them to be like, good job, and like, well done. And I mean, you did it. And I didn't really have any of those kind of positive reinforcements around me. So it was a very difficult time.
Yeah. I mean, we had our daughter just before, and it was still like, number one, like, if you're in your, mid 20s, early 30s or whatever, and like, which
Mhm.
I was, and when COVID happens, it's like, well, it sucks. It's going to be really boring. Hopefully no one gets sick. But
Mhm.
you're a young person, you're naive. You just sort of like, there's severity, but I don't think you like fully take it in. But we had just had a kid, and it was suddenly like, oh my God, what have I like brought a person into
Yeah.
to a certain degree? Because
Yeah.
you didn't know what the severity or what it was going to be like. And it was really like mentally challenging in that, like, number one, that you're going through all the stuff of like them not sleeping, and then like everything they do you think they're gonna die somehow, you know what I mean? Like, I remember
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
90% of what I did was just monitor life for a long time. It'd just be
Totally.
like standing
Totally.
over the crib being like, no, she's breathing, I'm like 95% sure. I'm like, that's not, walk out of the room and be like, that's not enough, I gotta touch her, and then be like, please don't wake up. You know what I mean?
I
And it's just
know.
so much of that. So to like add in a like, a giant disease, it's like, that's
I
so
know.
much, it's so much to take in. And like you're saying, it's like difficult that, I'm so thankful, because I think people are always like, everyone always wants to make everything, all technology, a villain, and to a certain degree it deserves all of that. But at the same time, it's like, dude, like my daughter has entire relationships with family all because
Yeah.
of technology. It's the best at
Yeah.
the same time. It's so cool that she has like, like she'll just call up and just start chatting or showing them around or doing whatever she wants. And she has like a full on relationship in that way. So that's like great that doesn't feel like it has to skip a beat every time we leave a place. So
For
it's
sure. It
tough.
was definitely an incentive for that kind of elderly generation to get on Skype or get on Zoom or figure it out, because they really needed to use that technology. I think
Yeah.
it helped my parents get much more online in that way.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, well, yeah, you're right. It totally like makes a motivator for maybe people who
Mhm.
aren't always as motivated by technology. So that's way
And
cool.
like you said, like I do think parenthood is partly just being terrified that something is going to go wrong for your child, like at all times. Like it's
Yeah.
just they could be. I feel like, my son was sick over the weekend, and it was almost like every hour I had to check his, put my hand on his
Hmm.
head, and he has a nosebleed. Oh my gosh, he's gonna die. It's just
Yeah.
like this kind of just worry. And I think that that's just part of parenthood. I'm still learning how to kind of um, manage and that kind of concern that I have for my child.
Yeah, it's weirdly like, it's like, without a doubt, the hardest thing you can do, like, no question in my mind. Like,
No
that is the hardest thing
question.
I've had to do as an adult. And it's also like, I can't imagine not doing it. Like, I just
Yeah.
can't, like, and she was not planned, nothing like that. We were super lucky in that way. And then
Yeah.
it's so, but it's like, it's such a different experience than what you had, which is
Yeah.
like, suddenly, oh my God, I'm not mentally, physically, anything prepared. I went through a whole stage of that because I was still like
Yeah.
smoking and drinking. And I'm like, okay, I have to
Yeah.
quit all of that at the same time. I need to get in really good shape because I need to be alive forever now. And it's just like, you have this like whole awakening of like, I started going to therapy. Like, I literally was like, I have to turn
Yeah.
every corner and I have to do it right now because I did not
Yeah.
realize, I was not prepared for this. So it's like a
Yeah.
whole different thing. But then everything has way more purpose than it did prior.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so much more. Like, even like, I can imagine you, like me working on this business or anything I work on myself personally or anything like that, is always kind of has this, well, what if she could work here one day? Or what if I could do this for
Yeah.
her? Or what if I can be different in this way or whatever? It's all these like kind of like, it makes you think long term all the time. Like, how did that
Yeah.
affect because you were in the middle of doing the cookbook, right? When you had him?
That's right.
Yeah.
So I started the cookbook almost by accident because we were going through a pandemic, and as everyone was doing, we were cooking a lot at home, and
Yeah.
you know tending to the sourdough starter and
Hmm.
growing vegetables and all of that stuff. And my mother's cookbook was there that I had never really had the time to really cook through. And
Is this like a handwritten type of cookbook? Are we talking about, or
it's
how'd
a,
she do it?
it's funny. People have asked me to show them, but it's not produced, and she's
Hmm.
definitely not like a she worked on it as part of her thesis, so it is printed at like the local Kinko, like like a Kinko's kind of
Yes.
place,
Yeah.
and spiral bound, and it definitely uses graphics that are you know available for mass use kind
Sure. Sure.
of. It's it's not a I mean, when she showed me that book, I was really excited about I thought that when she did that book that she should turn it into a real book. So
Yeah.
I talked to her a lot about design and photography and print production and distribution and all of those things that can launch a very special book like that. But she didn't that wasn't her goal. Like that wasn't her objective. Her objective was to go through this culinary school and complete her studies. And she was 60 years old and she wanted to do something for herself.
Whoa.
And
She
Yeah.
she went through culinary school in her 60s.
yeah, so
Oh,
after
Damn.
that is
she
so
had,
cool.
yes, she's it's quite I mean, it's really impressive. She had three kids, and we moved every 3 to 6 years. So we moved from America to Canada to Philippines, back to Japan, and and so she had everything to sort out for the family while my
Yeah.
father was working. And so she was a homemaker and a housewife for many years, and I think she always had kind of these higher aspiration, motivations and aspirations of working and having being a professional. She never really got to live that out. She never really got to do that, especially in all of these different countries that she lived in and
Yeah.
languages she didn't speak and communities that she wasn't part of.
Uh,
So yeah, so after the kids all went to university, she went back to culinary school and completed her
So cool.
studies. Yeah, it was really great. And the book that she made was a thesis, a product of her thesis. So I had this book lying around, and I was missing home a lot. I was pregnant. The borders were closed. I missed Japanese food.
Yeah.
I think my body was craving it, and there's definitely a comfort that I get from Japanese food that I don't get from any other cuisine. And especially when it comes to my mother's cooking,
yeah.
that's just the most comforting thing in the world. So I cooked through it, and I just started to take a little bit of notes on the side, ingredients that I couldn't get a hold of. Yuzu wasn't in season.
Hmm.
Gobo burdock root isn't available in New Zealand widely. So there were things that I couldn't get a hold of, and I just substituted. And aside from that, I I try not to eat a ton of meat. And as you guys know, Japanese food actually has quite a bit of meat in it.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, and so the book Mother Tongue doesn't, it just features recipes that don't have any meat. There is fish and fish broth, but
Hmm.
I've decided to substitute out all the meat for all the good yummy veggies that are around.
Yeah.
Is that was that an intentional choice you made? I mean, I would guess obviously, but is that an intentional thing for
It
your from
it
your perspective?
was.
Yeah.
It was. I do feel like Japanese cuisine relies on that that delicious meaty umami a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And as well as as well as fish, the umami you get from fish and shellfish. So if I was bringing a cookbook into the world right now, I was just thinking I would love for it to be for not it to not rely on meat to kind of yeah celebrate vegetables and not like I'm a vegetarian or vegan at the moment, but I wanted to offer something that could be used widely by vegetarians and vegans alike.
Something you said that really kind of struck a chord that Timothy mentioned, I think maybe before we started recording, but he and I went to Kyoto last year in October, and then we were in Tokyo this last April, right, Timbo? And it's clear everything is so seasonally focused, and I thought that was really cool. We had a tea ceremony with a brand that we work with, and everything was from just a couple blocks away and hyper seasonal, and all it was like it's going into fall, so we're celebrating the X, Y, and Z, and that's really interesting because I feel like that's something that was never really top of mind growing up, outside of a couple fruits here and there.
Yeah,
The supply chain has
yeah,
made it so you can kind of have anything whenever, more or less. And I like to be super intentional and be like, you know what? No, like for instance, in Colorado we have a lot of peaches, and we're about to get to the point where peaches are perfect, and
mhm.
from just right over the Rocky Mountains. So that's really cool. Just kind of highlighting the seasonality, like you said, yuzu wasn't in season, and the root was
Yeah.
hard to get in New Zealand.
It's I think seasonality, Japan has a few things that it's that you can celebrate about Japan. And like that celebration of seasonality is one of them.
Yeah.
And so it's just so cool how it trickles down into everything because right when I arrived, it was the end of the cherry blossom season.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there is kind of like this beautiful flurry of pink petals everywhere, and it's on the ground. And you guys may have been here maybe during that time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
we
Uh,
were.
were.
Yeah.
It was
yeah,
incredible.
it's incredible. And there's just this like during that season, people have, people celebrate the cherry blossoms. People drink with their friends outside. They have picnics. They plan outdoor activities, and there's this huge joy around the springtime event. But the cherry blossoms only last for about a week. It can be rainy, it can be windy during that time, and they all start falling. And there's a little bit of like a melancholy that comes with the the petals falling, and that you see these pink petals blowing around, and you feel you kind of feel nature a little bit like that. I know that's such
Yeah.
an emo way of saying it, but you just feel a little bit like sad that these beautiful trees have lost their petals.
Yeah.
But then you go into the rainy season and you start seeing these hydrangeas everywhere, and they're beautiful. And they you start seeing blues and purples and the things that people wear. And one I took a photo of a sneaky photo of a woman wearing a kimono. Kimonos are historically seasonal.
Mm.
So
Mm.
it's not only in the how heavy the textile is or how breathable that textile is, it's also in the patterns. It's
Yeah.
also in the flower motifs. It's also in the buttons and the threads that are used. So um, this woman was wearing this gorgeous like purple and blue um, kimono, and she had a hydrangea on her obi, and it was covered by this kind of sheer, breathable but very lightweight kind of seasonal throw over on top, and it was just so perfect. It was just perfect for
Hmm.
that time of year, and I love that season. We all wear rain gear and we all wear, um, we dress to the seasons, but there is a special kind of elegance when it comes to wearing a kimono that has it has a seasonal cues as well.
Akiko, you obviously number one, if you've never been told this before, you have a real poetic way of talking.
Yeah.
You should narrate the book too if you didn't do that already. But the obviously we kind of know that you have a little bit of but I don't know any of the details. You have a little bit of a background in clothing. Is that true? You worked in clothing before this?
I did work in fashion. So I started my career after I graduated from university in New York. I was actually really confused what I wanted to do, as most
Sure.
20-year-olds are. And I interviewed with everyone from like like accounting firms to like
Mm-hmm.
advertising to fashion to, to really, yeah, kind of fumble my way through kind of
Mm-hmm.
that first part of my career. And I ended up I had a friend who was working at Laird and Partners, which is a fashion advertising agency in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And they were looking for someone to go in-house at Donna Karan, New York. So
Oh, whoa. What
I
year would
started,
this have been?
this was in 2004.
Okay, so Donna Karen's still kicking. She's doing
Donna Karen's
business.
still
Yeah.
kicking. She doesn't have doesn't have the clout that she did with GKNY in like the 90s and
Sure.
or in the
They're still making
2000s.
money.
But they're still definitely
Yeah.
selling clothes.
Yeah.
I think that the 2000s were a really confusing time for Donna Karan because they were coming out of that 90s.
Yeah.
I mean,
Whirlwind.
it was all about Ralph Lauren, Tommy Hilfiger, DKNY. It was a little bit of a street aesthetic, and they were trying to figure out who their customers were. So it was an interesting time to be at Donna Karan. I spent 5 years there and I was in the creative services department. So the access that I had in that department from such a young age to fashion shows,
Mm.
to lookbook shoots, using the most Patricia Fields was styling
Oh
the
wow, yeah.
lookbooks, and Pat McGrath was doing the makeup at the shows. And Donna Karan still pulled the best models that were walking the runway. So it was at a young age I had access to all of that stuff, which was incredible introduction into fashion to that world. I came out of Donna Karan and wanted to work at something that was maybe a bit more into the creative field. And I came back to Japan and I started looking for some work in Tokyo. And my boss at Donna Karan recommended that I meet with a kind of PR and a kind of a creative PR firm here in Tokyo. They were just waiting for John Galliano to arrive in Tokyo for his annual research trip. So they brought me on board. He usually travels with not only his business partner but a team of creatives, and so we traveled across Tokyo for about 2 weeks with John Galliano and his team from Tokyo to Osaka to Kyoto to Naoshima. Naoshima was quite new at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And we looked at basically everything from art to performances to textiles. We were in Okayama looking at a denim from a denim factory. We went to traditional Japanese no shows, um, and just it was an inspiration and research trip. They would buy things that inspired them and bring them back to Paris to design for their haute couture show. So that was my so under that LVMH umbrella, I was able to work with both Donna Karan and John Galliano, two very different brands,
Sure.
and that was my introduction to fashion in my 20s.
What did like obviously it's two different experiences, but what designer of those two, being that they're very different, were you more like connected with aesthetically?
Um, well, at such a young age, there were so many layers of people between, say, Donna Karan and I.
Uh-huh.
But I mean, I did appreciate that kind of New York
Yeah.
um, Jewish, strong businesswoman. She was incredibly, from what I could see, Donna Karen was opinionated and always got her way. She had an extremely luxury aesthetic and understanding of luxury culture, and I thought that was incredibly powerful. I think that that was why she could pull so many talented people to work with her, is because she had that incredible sense of self and power. So that was cool about Donna
Yeah,
Karen.
never referenced enough in my opinion. Like when people, all these like younger kids who are really interested in like, all these like older shows, and anymore I feel like I
Hmm.
could get schooled by any 15-year-old because of
Oh yeah.
Instagram and stuff.
No.
But what's crazy is like what she did for designers like I loved like Phoebe Philo or Margaret
Mm,
Howell, or somebody
mm,
like really just paved ways that I don't think has, I don't know, it's like the credit just hasn't been served yet
for
in a weird way,
sure.
but it's, yeah, I mean that's an incredible brand to have worked for, no matter what decade it was. But yeah,
For
also
sure.
Galliano being such a different experience, I have to imagine, because of the
So
type of
different.
design.
And
But
that one was much more intimate because we would travel as a team of about 20. Um, and John Galliano is at that time this is he was still at Dior,
yeah,
being his wild self, and it was mind-blowing traveling
yeah.
with him across Japan. It was
Yeah,
just
Galliano seems like a guy who's got an alligator on board with him, kind of energy. You know what I mean? Like he's a wild guy.
he's totally
Yeah.
wild, and just the opportunity to kind of look behind the scenes at um, the brilliance and that comes along with that wild personality, the sleepless nights that
Mm-hmm.
he would work through, um, the moments of uh, the moments where he would kind of attach himself to a concept or an idea, based on what he saw. Those moments were, there were learnings for me for sure.
Yeah, you still see. There's obviously still plenty of glimpses of it. I think you think of people like Raf or Alessandro or Marnie or any of these brands that
Mhm,
there's still creative directors that really behave like creatives. You know what I mean? But
mhm,
it
mhm.
is, I think. Well, another brand I think Visvim, who I believe you've worked for, they still have this. But there's this like it does. It's funny that I think some of that creative type has lost its way to business. Do you know what I mean? Where
Yeah.
you don't see as much of that or as much freedom inside of that as there used to be.
Yeah. I wonder if because I know that that was always something that he struggled with as well, is are making his clothes, sell it. Are they going to sell? I mean,
Yeah.
that's the main concern of Dior, whereas he's trying to make the most amazing, beautiful thing that he can think of at the moment. Um, But I do think that maybe the choices of creative directors now lean towards business choices
Yeah,
rather
I would
than
agree.
creative choices. And I get it, man. It's hard to wrangle a true creative, to produce the amount of work that's needed to for the for these brands to be able to come up sell something new to their customers every season.
Fashion
It's
as a
an
business is like
Yeah,
it does not cater to the artist that it takes to make it. Do you know what I mean? Like if
yeah,
it's
for
like those two
sure.
things are so opposite, like complete opposite from one another. The fact that it moves so fast and it changes, and the demand of how many things need to drop per season, and all this, like it just doesn't feel like creatively. How could you be doing your best work
Totally.
every single time?
Totally.
Like that feels insanely difficult. I have no idea how someone would go about that. I mean, I still see people doing it. Obviously, we work in it and work with those
Mm-hmm.
people, but yeah, the
Mm-hmm.
volume at which I do think it takes a certain type of artistic person that like I don't
Mhm.
think, I mean, you'd never ask a painter to be like, how can you produce 55 things for the first part of the year, and the second part of the year you create another 65 things, and then
Oh my
there's like an
gosh.
in between time that we're making up
Do
that we
some there
need
too.
like 10 or 12 pieces. It's
Gosh, I
crazy. Yeah.
know, I know. So yeah, I was really blessed that I got to work with these two very different um creative directors, or in terms for Donna Karen, she's the owner and
Yeah.
she is the brand, and two different businesses very early in my career.
So how do we go from this to what you're doing now?
So after fashion, I entered a creative agency called Mother New York, and worked in their design under their design department. They were a very small new agency, an offshoot of their London office.
Mm,
And I worked under a design director named Michael Ian Kay. And I would consider that era of my career kind of my design era. And man, everyone needs a design era. I
hmm.
think everyone needs a design education. If you want to work in business, you need to understand design and the impact of design.
100%.
Learn about brand identity. Learn about logos. Learn about brand communication. What is the strategy that goes into building out a brand? I mean, those are all things that I really didn't have a deep understanding of. But after a few years at Mother, I came out and I felt like I had a design education that was
Yeah.
worth a postgraduate degree. It
Yeah.
was an incredibly worthwhile time in my life.
Wow. Okay, so then you said you were doing that, and then you're how does cooking factor in? Does it cook? Did you ever do that in any larger capacity, or is the beginning of this? Obviously your upbringing with your mother, and
Mhm.
did you have this as a hobby the whole time, or was it something that's like a later a life interest?
I think it's a later life interest. I think that it never, living between New York and Tokyo, having a a full-time job, and you have the city to feed you. I probably ate out 4 or 5 times a week, or did,
Yeah.
had and got takeout, and I cooking really wasn't a focus for me in my 20s. And I think that as you get older, you realize that there is something nourishing about home cooking,
Hmm.
that you can't really get from eating out all the time. There's something about cooking your own food or growing your own vegetables, or something that's incredibly fulfilling in a different kind of way. So I think it's something that cropped up later in my career, later in my life. But it was always there. My mother was a great cook, and she had a passion for food. My brother ended up becoming a food buyer here
Oh
in
wow.
Tokyo. So
Oh,
he
awesome.
works in food. Um, our It's definitely part of our family, but it was never a focus for me as I went through careers in fashion and design. And I think I got closer and closer to kind of what I studied in school, which was journalism and writing. After I left design, I was working at Vice, and
Mm.
they were starting to publish more and more online.
Hmm.
And my job was to come back to Tokyo, and their office was printing the monthly print magazine at the time, but to kind of really rethink that office and become a digital company.
Wow. Wow, you've had a lot of big careers. You know what I mean? Like, yeah,
In
yeah,
multiple different places. And
yeah.
Yeah, it's been a really fun. I think that one thing for me is I never really like to get boxed in
mhm.
Yeah.
um, into a role or into I love thinking about things big picture as well as thinking about things in detail. I I love subcultures much as I love popular culture. I
Hmm.
love youth culture, but I love something that has longevity. Like I never wanted to get boxed into something that felt very claustrophobic for me. And I think that my career reflects that part of my personality.
Well, I think that you think about even just this cookbook, and you think about your entire career arc, and it's like you can kind of see a little bit of each of those pieces of your life in this one project.
Mm, mm. I appreciate that. I would like to think that it's a culmination in parts of my love for fashion and my love for food and kind of my studies and writing and my work in publishing and online publishing um and I hope even though it was an incredibly personal project and with intimate stories about my family, that I've enjoyed how much it resonates with people across the world in different kinds of ways. There's there's of course the people who like Japan and Japanese culture.
Sure.
I
Mhm.
think that's definitely um, and then there's the foodies as well. They love Japanese food and they're interested in creating those flavors at home. But there's also the designers. They look at the cookbook and maybe they're not usually attracted to a glossy hardcover cookbook.
Mhm.
But there was something that resonated with something that was made almost by hand, um, and printed in a small print run and made with a lot of love.
Yeah, I mean, we have the book in front of us, and it's
Yeah.
it's really I really love the way this book turned out. Just with that, with the entire story that you pitched when we first talked about carrying it, was like, it is really like intimate from before you've even opened up the book. There's something really
Mhm.
special about it. You told me a little bit about the cover, which I'd love you for you to share, but
Yeah.
also just the fact that it looks like it could be someone's personal cookbook. The way it's kind of like put together, it feels that way. The pictures feel intimate, not only in that
Yes.
they're like there's vintage pictures of like you and your mom, an incredibly badass picture of you with a Coke and Louis Vuitton bags and stuff. But there's also like even the actual food photography feels very like
Yeah.
private, if that makes sense, and in a really cool way that growing up like Italian, and there's a lot of like privacy and like secrecy
Mhm.
around the recipes. You know what I mean? Like you
Mhm.
don't share them. There's an ongoing debate in my family that when my grandmother passed, we have the recipes for her sauce, but everyone's used them and it does not taste
It's
the
not
same.
quite
We
right.
think that
Huh.
she like withheld or something or gave us a different one. So that's still debated. Was there any of that? Did you feel any of that sharing these that like, oh, these are secret, I should hold them back? Or is that like is that more like maybe the Italian culture that is
Yeah.
different than Japanese culture? I don't know. It just feels like it feels so intimate. It obviously is. It's coming from your mother. Did it feel difficult to share, or was there anything you held back or anything, or is it all
I
in there?
didn't, and I didn't feel that sense of privacy. I totally know and love that exists in the Italian
Yeah, yeah,
grandma
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of. That's it's very cute in a way.
Mm,
Um, but I I felt like Japanese food was usually consumed in restaurants
yeah,
and not in the home. And there was a huge opportunity for people to take it off the pedestal.
Yeah.
It's a cuisine just like Italian or Mexican that you can actually make at home, and it's really not that difficult. I think there is a little bit of a stigma because there are ingredients that are unfamiliar in Western culture.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe a word that we're not familiar with, or
Hmm.
like you said, a lot of fish is involved,
Yep.
especially in the
sure.
broths and stuff. And
Yeah.
to piggyback what Timothy just said too, I know you said that you had kind of filled some of the gaps with things that were maybe seasonally unattainable or hard to get outside of Japan. Did you add any flair to any of these yourself too, of just being like, I've had it like this, but I actually like to add it this way, or
Kind of like
Oh,
how you
true
talked
to
about you took
form
out the
was it?
meat. Was there other things like that?
yeah, for sure. I mean, I like a lot of garlic and anything.
Yeah, yeah,
So if you're going to an izakaya and you're having a beer and you're having a little cucumber dish,
yeah,
I want that cucumber dish to have sesame oil and
Yeah,
salt and garlic. And I want it to
yeah.
be kind of punchy and crunchy and really just it makes you want to eat, drink more beers and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
have a lot of fun. So I
Yeah.
did dial up some flavors because I thought it would just enhance that kind of. I did do a little section on otsumami, which is little dishes that you eat while you're having a beer or a glass of wine, and I
Oh,
did make some of those flavors more punchy.
I love that. So off of that specifically, I walked into the room and I said, Timbo, I'm loving this. Everything feels so approachable. I fancy myself a better cook than I was 2 years ago, and then even way better than prior to that too. Is there something that you would say like is like best represents the essence of you? If you had to say this dish as a jumping off point for somebody, is there anything from the cookbook that comes to mind?
I love agedashi tofu. Have you guys
Yeah,
had that dish?
of
It's
course. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a warm tofu that's coated and fried on the pan,
yeah,
and then it's put into a warm, really kind of nourishing broth and topped with bonito flakes.
yep.
So that's something that I've had all throughout my life. I love tofu. I think homemade tofu in Japan you can't get anywhere else. So whenever I come back to Japan, I tend to eat a lot of tofu. But if you're not into tofu, I think that there's two cucumber dishes um, that I think has served as a gateway to a lot of my friends in terms of
Ah,
Japanese cuisine. So if you guys are coming into the summer season and there's going to be lots of cucumbers around in the next few months, it's really easy. There's one dish that does like a quick pickle. So it's a pickling method that only takes about 10 minutes. You just cut the cucumber and you coat it with salt and leave it while you make the rest of your dinner. And it'll be lightly pickled by the time that you're ready to eat.
mm,
So that's a really yummy, easy side dish. And then there's another cucumber dish that's a smashed cucumber, which I think is really a lot of fun also. You just cut off the ends and then smash it kind of into a shape that's going to really soak up the salt and the garlic
yeah,
and whatever you decide to put on it. It's really easy. But a cucumber side dish in the summer is it always kind of adds like a crunchy, welcome texture to your meal.
yeah. So feeding off of cucumbers specifically, you had mentioned earlier. Are you a gardener? Do you have space in Tokyo? Slash, were you gardening in your
In
life
New
as well?
Zealand, yeah, in New Zealand, we do have a garden, and I've learned how to garden.
Yeah,
Started with all the basics like tomatoes and zucchinis and cucumbers and stuff like that. But being able to incorporate those vegetables into my cooking has been like another level of joy.
like when you
So
grow them, you're saying.
yeah, and
Yeah, yeah,
just to have like a salad straight from your backyard. Do you guys have living spaces that can accommodate gardens in where
Hmm.
you are?
yeah. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Timothy has a little one outside. You've got some stuff in there. There's blackberries and
I'm not the gardener in
yeah,
our family. It's not
Yeah.
my thing, but like my wife does it, and then my daughter and I we like pick everything. So
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like it depends. Like it gets so funny like what ends up popping up out there versus what doesn't year to year. It's funny. But yeah, we've got a nice little space out there to do some work.
Yeah.
Nice.
And then
Yeah,
I've
and I
got. Oh, go ahead. Go
uh,
ahead.
no, I've learned about like composting
Yeah.
and like all of those things that I just never really had the space to do that kind of thing when I lived in New York or when I lived
Yeah.
in
Sure.
Tokyo. Um, but to learn about, yeah, that you can actually use your food scraps to create and enrich the soil that's going to make your own vegetables and your own fruit is just kind of like the circle of life, the next level stuff that I've been really enjoying.
Yeah. Just kind of completes the cycle. You know.
Yeah, totally.
I was gonna say I've been into gardening here and there, a lot more in the last 3 years. I actually no, not here and there. I love gardening and it's
Yeah.
one of my main activities.
Yes, screaming.
But we're having success with like a lot of tomatoes and other little one-offs. But when you said cucumbers, it got me thinking like, oh great, but none of ours took this year. Really crazy.
Oh
But
no. Oh
but
no. Yeah, cucumbers, maybe it needs to be very, very rainy. Like they require a lot of, has it been very hot?
yeah,
Yeah,
that was
brutal.
it.
Yeah.
Was
Mhm.
by the time we got them out because I typically wouldn't start them without going too deep into my gardening. But I typically wouldn't start them indoors. I like to like direct sow. But we did that this year, and they just didn't take. So I'll try
Yeah.
something different next year.
Yeah. I think the heat, that's another thing is like when to sow things and
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and things like that. The nerdy aspects of gardening I've been really enjoying reading about, um and when you get to use them in your own cooking, yeah, that was like kind of the aha moment for me is
yeah.
like that's really awesome that you can just make a salad quickly from your garden, or you can make a stir fry or whatever it is for dinner just by finding a few things in your garden.
Yeah.
It really, I mean, it's one of those things where even as someone who doesn't do any gardening, really, I mean, I'll help out if I'm asked, but it's not, I have too many hobbies going. I can't fit that one in. But it does make you, positively or negatively sometimes, like makes you appreciate what you're eating so much more. It's like, oh my God, this is like from right out there. Oh, this turned out so well, blah, blah, blah.
Took
I
a
can
long
really,
time to
I'm really
grow,
noticing it
and- yeah.
because I'm actively paying attention to it. Or sometimes you bring it in and you're like, this is not great, and I am really appreciative to what I'm able to get sometimes. You know what I mean? Because that was hard work, and nothing happened. It's no good.
Sure.
So it really makes you like appreciate food for better or worse. You know what I mean? In like its own way, that I think's really like I'm into anything that's going to make you appreciate the thing you're interested in more. So
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, it's
For
wild.
sure.
What do you think the biggest difference? I was just thinking about this earlier. What do you think? I mean, having lived in the U.S. and Japan and New Zealand. I mean, you're
New
living
Zealand,
also in
Philippines,
yeah. What do you think the biggest difference between at least Japanese, maybe if that's what you have the most experience with, and U.S. home cooking are? Because I think they're probably likely a different thing, or at least carried on in different ways.
That's a good question. I mainly cook Japanese food at home now, especially because my son really loves it. And when my husband cooks, he usually cooks kind of Western food.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have kind of both meals going during the week. Um, I do think that Japanese food can be limiting sometimes. Like when I cook Japanese food, I usually use sake, soy, and mirin.
Yeah.
And those are the basic foundations of the basic flavors. They make up that Japanese flavor. And then you add a dashi, or you add a meat or a fish or something like that to give it to make it a meal. But it can be limiting. Like sometimes I find myself saying like, oh, I just want something that doesn't taste like soy, like that soy taste. So what what Japanese people have done really well is that they've actually taken flavors from different areas in the world and made them palatable for Japanese people. So in Japan, when you guys travel here, um, you may notice like actually there's a delicious pizza place in most neighborhoods. There's great French food here. There's the all of there's a great Italian food here. All of these flavors, and you can get Nepalese food, you can get Indian food, you can get all the Southeast Asian cuisines. So I do think that Japanese food can be limiting in the flavor profile. And for me, I like to, I mean, I get bored really easily with a lot of things, including food. So I like to cook a range of food. American food for me, like because I spent six years in Ohio and then another 12 in New York. I think for me I don't know if I really know American home cooked food. Like for me, like I ate Japanese food when I lived with my parents in Ohio, and I ate takeout when I was when I was living in New York. I don't know. I don't think I know what's served really.
You never went to like a friend's house in Ohio to do a sleepover, and you're like,
yeah, yeah,
meatloaf and potatoes and all that. You know what I mean?
Like I don't remember the meatloaf and potatoes. I do remember a lot of takeout pizza.
Sure. That's American in its own way.
Yeah. But like, I don't know if I don't know if And I think American food is so different now than it is 20 years ago, as is, Japanese food is different than Japanese food 20 years ago. But I feel like now there's a lot, everyone eats very vegetarian, much more vegetarian
Hmm.
or vegan, incorporates a lot more veggies into their cooking. Like, I don't know if meatloaf really, do you guys cook meatloaf at home? Like, I
We
don't know if
don't,
that's,
but I
yeah.
can
Did
I can attest
adjust.
for Ohio that there's still a lot of meatloaf going on.
Yeah.
My wife and I for a while were like trying to do like an adjusted version of it that felt a little bit like more elevated, and that's like kind of a fun
Yeah.
thing to do. But that's cheating to a certain degree. Like
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
yeah.
one that's gonna hit is the one you have in like
Yes.
Ohio.
With the ketchup
Yeah,
on
yeah,
top and
yeah.
all
Yeah, and
that.
you're just
Yeah,
like, man,
yeah.
there's something that I mean, I don't
Yeah.
necessarily like crave it, but when you have one like that, you're like, this is its
Yes.
own thing that I don't even know how to
Yeah.
categorize, and I
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
think it's good in its own way. You know what
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
saying?
so I'm not familiar with the meatloaf with the ketchup on
Sure.
top. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it was, I mean, if I have a chance to go back to Greenville, Ohio one day.
If you're so lucky.
But I think that was also like a big adjustment for me and my mother is like lunch boxes that I would bring
Mm.
to school every day. My, my parents didn't know what a peanut butter and jelly sandwich was, or they didn't know. They've never seen a fruit roll up before.
Mm-hmm.
And they got me the right, eventually we got the right lunchbox, but they
Hmm.
didn't put the right things in there.
Mm.
And it was,
You a
you
public
know,
school?
it was a public school.
Son of a
And
bitch.
even when they, even when they would make me a lunch, or it would, I begged for them to make me a sandwich. Even when they would make me a sandwich, it was almost like a Japanese sando. Like it was so
Yeah.
yummy.
Yeah. So much better than the dog shit we were eating. But I also like I know like how that would have gone in school, unfortunately.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It would have been like that's weird food. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
That's so
we
weird.
I ate like plainly as I just eat kind of plainly, at least when I was younger I did, and I would get made fun of for eating like plain foods. Like it's not even like this, you know what I mean? So I can only imagine
It was
like
if
that's
it's different. It was if it's different, and
yeah.
that, yeah.
Yes, that
Yeah,
had to have been like a
it
tough
was
thing.
it was a tough thing. It was like a perfect sandwich with the crust cut off. There was maybe like one square that was like ham and lettuce, and then maybe the other one was like an egg sand, and all of that was super weird for my school. And like it was not what I wanted at all. I wanted like a smooshed up, you know,
Yeah, just a big
like
stupid sandwich.
yes, smooshed up peanut butter and jelly that's been,
Yeah.
was thrown into a
Yeah.
Ziploc bag. Yeah.
No intention at all.
Yeah.
Get it over with kind of food.
It'll do.
Yeah.
All right. We're talking sandwiches now, and this leads me into my next question perfectly.
Yeah.
I love Family Mart. I love everything about it. I love the sandwiches, the onigiri, the snacks, every little drink you can get. Sandwiches remind me of. I think the egg salad sandwich is absolutely perfect. I think I had at least 5 or 6 of them last time we
And
went.
Akiko, listen, there's a lot of like Americans that like and Japanophiles that are very interested in these places. Let me tell you, Chase loves it in a different way. It's
It's like it was made for me. When
Yeah.
we went, without going too in detail, Timothy was ill for the latter half of the trip. I was kind of solo, just kind of roaming myself, taking care of myself, and I did eat at a ramen spot twice, but beyond that, I fed myself solely out of Family Mart, and then a Lawson's was really close as well. So I'd love to get your take on, are you like a Family Mart, 7-Eleven, Lawson's person? What are some of kind of the hitters that we can keep an eye out for?
Yeah. I'm
yeah, you knew.
Yeah.
definitely a 7-Eleven
Oh,
girl.
okay.
I also like Family Mart. I mean, those two are the two major ones. The closest one to the apartment, that my parents' apartment in Tokyo, is a 7-Eleven.
Mm-hmm.
So I tend to go to the 7-Eleven a lot. My main thing that I buy at convenience stores here is ice cream.
See,
Oh,
yeah.
we haven't
I
gone
didn't
into
dip
this
too
enough.
far into that.
It's
yeah.
like intimidating because there's a lot of tools and stuff. You know
There's
what I
a
mean?
lot of selection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a range from kind of iced flavored ice, which is very, very refreshing in the hot and humid months,
Yeah.
to everything in between. A biscuit, you can have a kind of an ice cream sandwich. You can
Hmm.
have ice cream on the stick. You can have popsicles. You can have popsicles in a plastic tube. You can
Yeah.
have, there's a huge range, but um, there's there's a few that I gravitate towards, which you know are just these ice creams haven't changed maybe in like 50 years.
Yeah.
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 The flavors are spot on. They are the flavors. They're the ice cream flavors that I ate when I was little. My
Yeah.
parents ate when they haven't changed the recipe as far as I know. They taste the same every single time. And there's a comfort to that. There's
Yeah.
you know exactly what you're gonna get. And so yeah, I definitely hit up the ice cream section
Yep.
of the kombini when I'm back in Japan.
Let me ask you a question. You obviously have a sophisticated palate at this point, I would say, or at least the way you talk and enunciate makes me believe you do. So you don't have to tell
You could
me
be
one way or the
royalty.
other. But let me ask you this. Let's say you've had a bad day, kids not sleeping, husband's
Mhm,
annoying for no reason.
mhm,
You got it, and you got to just go out of control a little, with food. Do you have
mhm.
is it ice cream is that the one you binge on, or is there something else?
Definitely ice cream.
It's
Yeah,
ice cream.
Right on.
definitely ice cream. Yeah. And I mean, I regret it because and sweets. I love sweets,
Me too.
but I do love ice cream. And ice cream, you just can't eat that many. I mean, you feel ill.
Oh yeah.
Um, but sometimes I'll eat like two or something, or two or three. Or if I eat three, I'm getting really ill. But
Yeah.
you guys know the size. It's kind of like a chocolate bar size
Yeah.
of ice cream. And yeah,
You
there's a
can you can
few.
put together three easy in a night. You know what I mean? Where you kind of just keep going back. You're like one more, it's fine.
Yeah,
I got a bad day.
yeah.
I got
I
an
mean, it
excuse.
doesn't make me feel great after
Mm-mm.
three. No, no.
No. All right, that's the splurge one.
Yeah, I love that. And also, I have to say, too, I've said it on the pod before, but I love that you can get everything in grape flavor, more or less,
Yes,
which is awesome
yes,
because in America, I feel like grape is an afterthought. That's usually the dregs. That's what's left last in the pack of popsicles or what have you.
yes.
And then also, we never see honeydew or
Yeah.
cantaloupe
We
flavor at all
love
here.
melon flavor, he and I,
Oh
and like
yeah,
Japan, like they remember it. Here we
yeah,
just it's an afterthought
Anything
at best, if
honeydew,
any
I
at
get
all.
it. Gotta get
yeah.
it.
I think what you're saying is that you guys are seeing this that seasonality again,
Yeah.
Yes.
because because ice cream companies and drink companies and the food industry in general, they also know that seasonality is important for Japanese consumers. So they offer a lot of seasonal flavors.
Yeah.
And that kyoho, that large grape that comes
Hmm.
out in the summertime in Japan I mean, it's expensive, but it's beautiful and it's delicious.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the best, kind of grape in the world. But what you're seeing are products that are kind of marketing to that grape.
Yeah.
But it is, I do see it as like one of the three or five top flavors and juices all year round. But honeydew, peach, grape.
Yeah.
Um, right now it's July, so I'm seeing a lot of watermelon. That pops out up in drinks and ice creams and sweets and everything across the food industry.
All right.
Japan is incredible at marketing that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
100%. Yeah. They've nailed the marketing
Yeah.
on that stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Let me rattle off a couple of like on a hot takes at you here. What do you think the
Okay.
best fruit is? We Chase and I debate this a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, so difficult. I love nashi. Do you guys know the nashi? It's a
You're
it's
gonna
a
throw one
pear.
out we don't even know? What's that?
It's a pear. It's
Oh,
a
that's
Japanese
Oh.
I would
Asian
argue.
pear.
Yeah, I
Yes.
love a pear.
Okay. Yeah.
It's
Okay.
it's very it's juicy
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
and um it can be watery, but when you get the right one, It's full of flavor and very juicy and very refreshing. It's not like an apple at all. Like it doesn't have that kind of crispness. It
Yeah.
almost has like a textured grain to the bite.
Agreed, agreed. And in a good one, it's almost the flavor purple. That's how I categorize it in my head. It's almost like purple grape flavor. Like I know it's separate, but I think of it as purple.
It is like a more subtle, it is more a more subtle flavor, I think, than
Yeah.
like the honeydew. The
Oh,
honeydew
for
is
sure.
like a sugar, it's like a sweet sugar in the peach as well. Like I would categorize those two as like the sweetest, one bite and you're just like you overcome with sweetness.
Yeah.
But the nashi pear is the Asian pear is a lot more subtle. And I think
Refreshing.
that's my favorite. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. That's a very solid answer. Did we not? We went into any sort of market we could go to in Japan. We're just like, what's the most expensive fruit? I don't care what it costs. We want it.
Yeah, yeah. We got
Because
some
they take
citrus.
fruit serious. They're putting it in cool packaging.
Oh.
There's all sorts of things. Here it's just like, it's like they at the front of the grocery store, they put it all in one
Yeah.
single thing and they're like, there you go.
Yeah.
That's the fruit we got.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that first day we went to, is it Daimaru in the basement of Tokyo?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, and we were right in the gifty fruit section, and we couldn't resist. We got some citrus, we got I think some strawberries.
Just told us which one was most expensive. That's what we wanted.
Did you guys bring it back to the hotel and like cut it up and eat it there?
Yeah, well, we didn't have cutting utensils, so just sort of pulling it
went to
apart with
town.
our hands over a trash
Oh
can.
no.
Yeah.
Eating like $100 pear or whatever.
It was a real pleasure, though.
Yeah,
It was a real
it was great.
pleasure.
Yeah, we loved it. Okay,
awesome.
let's think here. Okay. So the one thing that, well, I guess it's a little carryover from the U.S. I would say in a lot of cases. But do you have a best if you had to do fast food? We know it's bad, obviously, but it's good. It's also good in its own way. Do you have a favorite like fast food situation?
Oh, I mean, I do because of my time in New York, I love Mexican food. Um, I love a taco or a burrito. But Mex the Mexican food hasn't arrived in Japan in the way that I would like it to yet. I feel
Oh.
like it's coming. And there's little glimpses of it, but not in the kind of fast and accessible way that you can, that's available in LA or New York or in basically anywhere in America.
Yeah.
I feel like you can
Um,
live anywhere in the U.S. and get a good Mexican.
I was gonna
food
say
restaurant.
we've got fantastic
yeah,
Mexican right down the
yeah,
street.
super jealous. I do think for me, like Mexican food, along with Italian and Japanese, is probably my top three favorite culinary cuisines in the world.
Yeah, it's fun to cook too.
Yeah,
And it has,
it's
like Japanese food, it has such a range. You know what I mean? Like such
Oh,
a
yeah.
huge range of what it could be.
Yeah.
That it's like
Oh.
it's really fun to learn to cook in that way.
Totally. You can make it with rice. You can make it, you can put it on a chip. You can roll it in a tortilla. You can soak it with sauce. Yeah, it's just
Yeah. Soups
very,
and yeah.
yeah, and soups. And yeah, I do love it. I do love a Mexican, but in lieu of Mexican food here, um, if I know this isn't considered fast food in America, but soba noodles in Japan are a fast food. You go in
Oh.
and you probably eat it within 10 minutes, just like a bowl of ramen noodles.
I
Yeah.
wish we had that situation here. That would be so much
Quick in
better.
and out.
Yeah.
I did love that.
Yeah, it's anything with noodles that have been boiled. In Japan, you say it's it's gonna get limp. It's gonna lose its texture and its flavor.
Yeah, you got to move quick.
So you have to haul that into your mouth as quick as you can. And
Yeah.
that's why at ramen booths or at soba places, they don't want you lingering around and having a chat and having, when it's time, when the noodles come out, you must eat it quickly. And I think that's if you're at a noodle place, that's the most respectful thing that you can do is when the noodles come out, you just shut up and eat it.
Oh, I love that. I'll tell you right now. I did. I went to town. I went to town, so I did the right
The
thing.
keep it moving mentality that Japan has
Yeah.
we could really use to learn something. If any of us who've been in a coffee shop, New York or otherwise, here we got people dilly-dallying, asking what kind of flavors of things. Nuh-uh. No choices. You have it ready when you get up there and then leave.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
got to get
totally.
more of that going on in the U.S. There's too much milling around here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally. And I think that's for me, that's fast food, right? Like
Yeah.
you are there to eat. You're not and it doesn't have to come out of a food truck or it doesn't have to come out of a
Yeah.
takeout window. You can go to a restaurant and have fast food. You can be in and out in 15 minutes, if it's meant to be eaten that way. So for me, like a soba noodle is kind of a fast food.
Yeah, I like that answer a lot. Well, Akiko, I don't want to take up any more of your time because you've been so generous to begin with, and this has been awesome. Anybody who's listening and has been interested in all, this book is really great, especially for, Chase is holding it right now. What I really liked it for, Akiko, was that it just felt so approachable for something that I agree. I think a lot of people, especially in the U.S., even people that are very interested in Japan and Japanese food, it does feel intimidating to cook at home because there's a lot of things we're unfamiliar with. I've loved Indian food all my life, and it feels, until I had somebody that I met at a grocery store here that, later in life, that was able to be sort of a shaman to me and be like, here's kind of your baseline stuff. Here's what you need to have to begin and like start actually like putting together some things. It just felt impossible. There's just so many things I was unfamiliar with and didn't know I needed. And this feels like that perfect shaman. Like this book felt like you could jump into Japanese cooking for the first time learning from this book. So I think it's really great. And it's like beautiful to look at, which you rarely get kind of both of those things in one category anymore. So I think you've done an excellent job. We're really proud to carry it. I hope people buy it. And this has been a pleasure talking to you. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you so much for all of that. I remember that you referenced the cover, which was a pattern called Samekomon. It's a shark skin pattern, and I chose it because my son was born during the production of the book,
Yeah.
and his name is Mako, and it means shark in Maori, which is the the natives of New Zealand.
Yep.
Um,
Wow.
and so it had a really nice kind of relevance there, and the samekomon pattern is used on textiles and fabrics from the Edo period on kimonos, and it was used because the shark skin pattern is known to ward off evil, so it protects the wearer of those garments. And I used it on the book because I thought it would be a nice thing to have in people's homes as protection, as a kind of a next level kind of spiritual protection of someone else looking over you. So hopefully, your customers resonate with the cookbook and the recipes, but also they'll have something very special that'll keep them safe in their homes and their families.
So cool. I mean, just that level of intention and thoughtfulness is really why you should buy the book right there. Again, thank you so much.
Yeah,
if you ever need anything
much,
from us, you
guys.
just be in touch, and we'll talk soon, hopefully.
Appreciate that. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye. Have a good day. Yeah.